I still remember the exact moment the judge leaned forward, adjusted his glasses, and asked a single question that cracked the entire room open like a fault line. "Ma'am, were you aware that part of your house sits on land you do not legally control?" The sound her confidence made when it collapsed was almost audible, a sharp, hollow silence. And that was the moment I realized the HOA president who sued me had built her entire reign on ground she didn't own. But none of that was obvious when I first moved in. Back then, I was just a guy trying to make a sensible decision for once. My name's Daniel, and 6 months earlier I'd bought a modest corner lot house in a suburban neighborhood called Maple Grove. Nothing fancy. A single-story ranch from the 60s, creaky in places, solid where it mattered. It wasn't my dream home, but it felt honest. The kind of place you could slowly improve without pressure. The price was fair. The commute was short, and after years of apartment living, the idea of my own driveway and backyard felt like freedom. The neighborhood looked calm, quiet. Lawns trimmed like military haircuts. Mailboxes identical lined up with unsettling precision. A few American flags gently moving in the breeze. At the time, I thought it meant pride, community, stability. Now I know it meant surveillance. The morning after I moved in, I was knee-deep in boxes, sweat dripping down my back, trying to figure out where I'd packed the coffee maker when I heard knocking. Not a polite knock, not even an impatient one. It was sharp, loud, deliberate, like someone announcing authority. I opened the door and immediately felt smaller. She stood there, stiff-backed shoulders, squared clipboard pressed against her chest like armor. Early 50s. Bleached blonde hair frozen into place. Khaki pants ironed so sharply they could cut paper. A crisp button-down shirt with a tiny HOA logo stitched over the pocket. "I'm Linda Pembroke," she said without smiling. "President of the Maple Grove Homeowners Association. We need to discuss several violations I've already observed." No hello, no congratulations on the new house, just violations. She didn't ask if now was a good time. She didn't ask my name. She glanced past me into my living room like she was already inspecting it, then looked down at her clipboard and began reading. My moving truck had been parked on the street longer than the 2-hour allowance. My grass was a 1/4 inch above the approved height. The mailbox was an outdated model, not on the HOA approved list. She spoke with the confidence of someone used to not being questioned, flipping pages like a prosecutor presenting evidence. Then she tore off a page and handed it to me. $300 in fines. "Welcome to Maple Grove," she said, smiling just enough to make it hurt before turning and walking away toward the house directly behind mine. That was the first day. It did not get better. Over the next few weeks, Linda became a constant presence. She fined me for having the wrong color garden hose visible from the street. She measured the distance between my trash cans with a tape measure, crouching in my driveway like a crime scene investigator. When I installed new blinds, she cited me because they were off-white instead of pure white. She once rang my doorbell just to tell me my porch light bulb wasn't the approved color temperature. At first, I tried to laugh it off. I told friends, "Guess I've got one of those HOA Karens." I paid some of the fines just to keep the peace. I told myself it was temporary, that once I was settled, she'd move on to someone else. But Linda didn't want compliance. She wanted control. The certified letter arrived on a Tuesday. 6 months of back HOA dues plus late fees. $2,400. According to Linda, the previous owner had stopped paying, and now the debt was mine. I walked over to her house, letter in hand, trying to stay calm. I told her I'd review my closing documents and get back to her. "There's nothing to review," she said, arms crossed on my porch, blocking my doorway like she owned it. "Every homeowner in Maple Grove pays dues. It's not optional. If you don't pay, I'll place a lien on your property." That night, I spread every document from my closing across my dining room table. Deed, survey, title report. Papers I'd barely skimmed before. I was exhausted, angry, and underneath it all, unsure. I stared at the paperwork until the words blurred and caught myself thinking something that scared me. Maybe she's right. Maybe I made a mistake buying this place. Maybe I should just pay and be done with it. That was the lowest point, the moment I almost surrendered. And that's when I noticed the document I didn't remember signing. A land lease agreement. Dated 1973. 99 years. Paid in full. attached to my deed like an afterthought. I reread it 3 times, certain I was misunderstanding something. The lease didn't just cover my lot, it extended beyond my property line. Curiosity replaced exhaustion. I pulled county records online, old parcel maps, original surveys. My heart started pounding as I traced the boundaries. The leased land wasn't empty. It overlapped the neighboring lot, Linda's lot, specifically the back portion of it, specifically part of her house. The next morning I went to the county recorder's office. I spent hours there digging through yellowed files with the help of a clerk who'd clearly seen every kind of property disaster imaginable. When he pieced it together, he leaned back and shook his head. Developer went bankrupt in the 70s, he said. Did a lot of creative land deals. Nobody cleaned them up properly. According to the records, when Linda's house was built in the early 90s, no one accounted for the lease. Her house had been partially built on land that legally wasn't hers. I hired a real estate attorney named David Lawson. He spent 2 weeks reviewing everything. When he finally called me into his office, he didn't sugarcoat it. "This is real," he said. "The lease is valid, binding, enforceable." "So, what does that mean?" I asked. He paused. "Technically, she's been trespassing for decades. I didn't want to destroy anyone's home. I didn't want revenge. I just wanted the harassment to stop. So we sent a letter, calm, professional, explaining my exemption from the HOA and mentioning the boundary issue. Linda showed up at my door the next day, shaking with rage. "How dare you try to weasel out of your obligations with made-up technicalities?" she screamed. "I don't care what your lawyer says. You live here. You pay." I stayed calm. It felt strange, like stepping off a ledge and realizing you could fly. "I suggest you have your attorney review the documents," I said. "This isn't a technicality. It's reality." She laughed, a sharp, humorless sound. "I'll see you in court." And she meant it. When I was served with the lawsuit, the fear came rushing back. $10,000, emotional distress, legal fees. I sat in my car afterward, staring at the steering wheel, wondering if I'd gone too far. But something inside me hardened. We counterclaimed trespassing, unjust enrichment. When Linda's attorney saw the documents, he called almost immediately requesting a settlement conference. Linda refused. 3 months later, we stood in court. She walked in confident, polished, wearing her HOA pin like a badge of honor. She smiled at me like this was already over. Then David laid out the evidence, slowly, methodically. Maps, surveys, satellite images. The judge leaned forward. "Ma'am, were you aware?" Her face went pale. The ruling was swift. Her claims dismissed. $18,000 in back rent, $400 a month going forward, and a warning stop harassing me. She stood so fast her chair fell backward. 2 weeks later, she resigned as HOA president. That's where it ends. No celebration, no victory lap. Just the quiet collapse of someone who thought power meant ownership. Sometimes the people who push the hardest forget to check who owns the ground beneath their feet.